What's up, everybody? Thralls Metal here once again. I'm Necrotic.
I'm Jammin John.
And we have a pair of album reviews for you, or at least an EP and an album. We've been eagerly anticipating this one just because, I mean, all right, it invites an interesting conversation about re-recordings, but also it's a specific pair of re-recordings that I really wanted to hear. So we are going to go over the latest two offerings from Cavalera Conspiracy with their re-recordings of the OG Sepultura albums, Bestial Devastation, their debut EP, and Morbid Visions, their first LP. So these re-recordings came out on the 14th of July on Nuclear Blast Records. As for Cavalera Conspiracy, this band formed in 2007 in Phoenix, Arizona. They have 4 studio albums, not counting these two. And I'm not counting these two for a specific reason, but they are part of their catalog. These two are Sepultura albums, which formed back in like 1985 in Sao Paulo, Brazil. And that's kind of where we all know Max and Igor from. Now, these two specific albums that they went back and re-recorded are ones that I can definitely make an argument for re-recording.
Correct.
Just because their earlier stuff, in terms of production, it was really raw and, you know, not necessarily, you know, their best in terms of like actually recording it. Now, when it comes down to like playing it and the influence these two albums have, I'm not even going to argue that. Honestly, they're two of the most influential albums in extreme metal in general. But the production was always sort of an issue for me, especially even going from those albums to Schizophrenia later.
I mean, first of all, it was the 80s. It was the early 80s for that matter. And they were kids at the time.
Yeah.
So, like, you're a young band. You don't have a lot of money. I mean, you're in Sao Paulo. You know, you probably don't have access to the greatest of studio equipment, mics, so to speak. So, like, obviously they're going to sound a little rough. But the re-recording, ooh.
Well, I mean, over the years, Max has definitely formed a solid relationship with one Arthur RIZK, who did all the production here, the mixing and mastering. And yeah, he's been doing a lot of his albums here lately. And there's something about Arthur's approach to mixing and, I don't know, like just getting that kind of raw sound. It sounds well produced, it sounds modern, but it also sounds very old school. There's lots of reverb and everything sounds just gritty and dirty, but again, well produced. And he was literally the perfect guy for this because the grit was already intact with these old school songs. He just needed to make them sound a little bit better because, again, the production on the original ones, pretty fucking rough.
So we just start off with Bestial Devastation. Now, this is challenging for the both of us because we're not going to review the songs. You know, we've already done that.
Yeah.
We've already done that when we did the Sepultura ranking. You know, most of you, if not all of you, have probably listened to these records quite a bit, especially since they're old school Sepultura records. But I mean, I guess what we can talk about would just be the variances in how they sound. Right from the title track, Bestial Devastation, I just thought immediately, right from the first guitar hit, that it sounds more alive, sounds more evil. The guitars are fucking huge.
Massive.
Snarling fucking ugh.
There is a gross crunch to every sick riff. And, I mean, this band, well, at least, all right, the two main guys from Sepultura here, at least, you know, in terms of this release, have not slowed down. In fact, they were playing with the same ferocity, the same energy as they did on the original recordings. It's just recorded better. Like, you can actually make out every note. And, I mean, one thing that I was going to say right away is the guitars are in tune, because that was kind of a, you know, a knock on the OG 2 releases there, Bestial Devastation Morbid Visions, was the guitars weren't necessarily in tune, and they had a very muddy, indistinct sound. I even own the remasters of both, and it still doesn't sound that great.
No, and the timing I always thought was kind of off. Like, in this case, now it's put together, it's still in your face. First of all, I've always loved Igor Cavalera as a drummer. I've always thought he was a master behind the kit, and the way he hits those drums, it just sounds like he caught him breaking into his house. Just pummeling, dude, and he hasn't lost it at all. It sounds amazing. It sounded amazing back then, and it still sounds amazing now, but you can just fucking hear it.
Yeah, it sounds like he's playing the drums with either a hammer or a human femur. Like, it is so aggressive. But again, the thing you hit on was the timing. Both Max and Igor have become better musicians over the years. They've learned different things. And this is going back and reapproaching something that they wrote as teenagers. But they're coming back with, a little bit of like a mindset of like, all right, there's a few things we definitely did wrong that we could polish out and still retain the energy, because that is kind of the main thing on here. And I was a little bit worried because re-recordings, I don't know, they're a dicey subject, and we'll get into that a little bit more. But I wanted to make sure that that energy was intact, because honestly, that's what I listened to those first two Sepultura releases for, is that energy. It's kind of unhinged. It's almost kind of punky. Like, let's just play as fast and as loud as we can. And that is most definitely recaptured here.
The rage of kids played by rage-filled adults.
Yeah, I mean, you transition from young and pissed off to old and bitter. It only makes sense. Just, sometimes you don't hit things as hard because, like, you got sore joints and shit, but no one told Igor. Yeah. Now, of course, Max and Igor were on the original, and, of course, the other guys aren't on this one. But they did round out this lineup with some people that are closely entwined with the whole Cavalera camp, namely Amadeus Cavalera from Go Ahead and Die, and that's Max's son, and he's a killer musician in his own right, and Daniel Gonzalez, who has been their touring guitarist for a while, who is just a fucking beast. We just saw him recently with Possessed.
Yep.
My God, that dude can fucking play.
And not only does he nail all the solos that were on the album, he still manages to put a little bit of his flair on there. Just everything sounds crisp, and all the squawking and the squeals and the dive bombs. It's just like he was made for both these albums, to play on both of them. Like, somehow they took him back 40 years and they were like, all right, check this out. And he was like, all right, now check this out. And just fucking nailed it.
And, I mean, in terms of, like, the songwriting, like, they didn't really tweak much. These songs are still, like, almost just 100% the originals, just with better production. Especially Antichrist, which I've always liked because it's kind of a proto-death metal song. Yep. Like, it has blast beats on it. The evil tremolos that are all over it just kind of scream more like Possessed and like early Death, even though this album predates Death. And Warriors of Death in particular, another absolute banger in here. But yeah, right away we were impressed. We actually had to take a little bit of break and fucking look at each other. It was like, dude, was that fucking sick or what? And we agreed that that was sick. Now, both these albums have a new track on them, and we're actually going to go over those at the end after we've gone over both albums in terms of the re-recordings. But as far as Bestial Devastation goes, fucking absolutely whoop-ass, furious listen. Again, captures that old school spirit, but, kind of puts a fresh coat of paint on it.
Yeah.
And
yep, that's a good way to...
honestly, like, again, re-recordings are very dicey with me. Like, a lot of times when a band re-records something, it's like, man, you know what? Do they really need to?
Well, or it loses the flair that the original had. Like, they re-record it and they end up either dumbing down instruments or turning things up too high. Like, a lot of re-recordings, people tend to fuck up. Yeah. And in this case, they didn't at all.
Yeah. They got the right producer to kind of capture that raw feel, but also give it a little bit of a modern twist, just in terms of like clarity and making the riffs really stand out, because that was one of the main things. Like, I can make out all the riffs, and they are as glorious as I fucking remember them, and they actually sound a lot better here. And Max vocally sounds a lot different than his old school days. Like, the first two albums, it was kind of a dull roar. Like, yeah, it had some character to it. A lot of it brought on by his accent, because the Brazilian accent is always been like one of my favorite things about Max's vocals, just the way he says things. But now, with this additional reverb, and he's kind of back in the mix, and he's able to do more high and low stuff now. Like, he really wasn't doing that earlier on. It gives the vocals a little bit more character and adds a bit of atmosphere too. So that was Bestial Devastation. We got to get on to Morbid Visions, their first full length. And production is just a little bit different. Like, that's honestly the only thing I noticed between the two in terms of production. Like, it's just a hair different, and honestly, it's compression.
But honestly, in my opinion, I think you'd want it to sound a little bit different, just to make both of these individualistic as to what they are. Like, if they would have made Morbid Visions sound the same as Bestial Devastation, you would have said, well, why the fuck did they separate them as two separate releases and not just make it into one? Because, like, if you go on Spotify and you look up Bestial Devastation and Morbid Visions, it's actually just on one thing. They just have it, like, hyphenated, and that's it. But, I mean, I kind of like it sounding just a smidge different, and like it's not a lot. It's not overly noticeable. Just the guitars are a little bit more compressed. Everything else is fucking spot on.
Yeah, I think the drum production's pretty much the same for both. And man, can Igor still play at Mach 10. But at the same time, like, this is where he gets a little bit looser. Like, you get the more off-time, little breakdown rhythms, like on Mayhem and Crucifixion, and the supremely underrated Empire of the Damned. Honestly, I like that song, but it doesn't stand out much because, again, like, the production and, again, the guitar tone on the original, it's a good song, but on this version, it just jumps out at you and punches you in the face and makes you spit out all your fucking teeth. It just sounds fucking monstrous. And, the minor tweak to the guitars, granted, I like how they sound on Bestial Devastation a little bit more, but just because they're extra gritty sounding. They just took a little bit of the high end, like a little bit of that high end sizzle off, and a little bit of the bass, and yeah, it still sounds heavy, it still sounds chunky as hell. It's, just missing that extra bit of just over the topness, but man, these songs are fucking vicious still.
I said it earlier, if this would have come out sounding like this back in 1985, I can't imagine, like, that sets the bar pretty high for back then and now. Like, I think a lot of thrash death metal can't achieve this kind of tone even now. It's just so awesome to be able to hear all this, because, like, listening to these records prior to now, like, they're good, but the production was so kind of that it took away from the songs. In this case, it brings everything back to life.
And the production is kind of a key thing here, because you listen to a lot of re-recordings, like, the first thing I can think of is the re-recording of Bonded by Blood that Exodus did. It sounded, kind of like everything they were putting out at the time, like that same production, which was good for the modern output, but not good for the original one. You need someone that's going to kind of capture that same vibe. That is a common mistake, I think, with re-recordings, is a lot of them just get the producer they've been working with and it's like, yeah, he's given us this polished, pristine, very modern sound on all of our releases. Why not hear it like this? And it's like, well, because that's not like the overall vibe of it. Like, I didn't want to hear a very polished, clean version of Bonded by Blood. I wanted to hear the one where it sounded like you could hear someone throwing a chair in the background. Like, that's the whole vibe. And that was important on here because RIZK still captured that.
Correct. It's
raw and gritty sounding. It's just, again, a little bit more modern. The extra atmosphere in terms of like layering the feedback and dive bombs, some of the muffled drum intros and stuff.
Yep.
Like, those little extras are absolutely awesome. And so, like, very much in the same vein of what they were going for originally.
And the addition to Max's vocals, again, like we talked about earlier, having him be able to hit highs and lows and different growls and different tones and overall giving each song more character vocally is really cool.
Yeah. And hearing those big doomy riffs that pop up towards the end of the album, like Show Me the Wrath, Funeral Rites, which is such a fucking bleak, nasty song. All of Max's love for Hellhammer and Celtic Frost comes out in pretty much every riff on that. But hearing, again, those riffs with some clarity, some more definition, some additional heft, too, it's just even more seething. But yeah, going back and hearing, the classic ones, like, a mutual favorite of ours, Troops of Doom.
Oh, God, I love that song. Anyway.
Yeah, it's always been a banger, but honestly, hearing it now is like, man, I can hear every single thing. And granted, I still like the original. I'll still go back and listen to it, but something about this one, it just sounds, again, just a bit better. And I know that's like sacrilege to some. And I'm fully, aware that I am probably irritating the fuck out of a lot of like super fucking, rigid fans. Like, no, it's supposed to sound like complete shit. That's the appeal. That's the aesthetic. I want to hear the mistakes and the poverty and every bit of just dumb shit that they could have corrected still on there. And I get it. That's a big fucking thing with like a lot of old school releases, and I like that too. But some of them were recorded badly. And I know that's part of the charm sometimes. Like, it's a demo vibe. Like, technically you could argue that Bestial Devastation was kind of a demo too.
Yeah, fair enough.
But I also want to be able to hear all the music clearly. I want to be able to like pick out every single riff that I like, and I'm able to do that so much easier here.
And even the naysayers that say an original recording should sound shitty. Like, I know that everybody at one time or another has said, man, this kind of sounds like butt, I wish I could hear it. This is that moment. This is that moment in time where you may have said, this kind of sounds like butt, I wish I could hear it. This is now. This is what this is.
Yeah.
This is that momentary wish of, I wish I could hear these riffs. You can fucking hear them now.
Yeah, and honestly, like, another argument here is even the remasters of these two albums, they still don't sound very good. And I'm not saying, oh, they should go back and re-record every Sepultura album with Max. No. Like,
don't touch Cassidy.
Yeah, and don't touch Arise, and don't touch Beneath the Remains. Don't touch Schizophrenia either. Just remaster it a bit better.
You could probably touch Roots.
Yeah, nah, leave Roots alone. And I'm not opening the door for like other bands, you know, like Metallica re-recording Master of Puppets. Holy shit, don't fucking do that. But like certain ones, like ones that they feel like, hey, we got some things wrong, and granted, I know the fucking fans love it, but I feel like we could do it a little bit better and still capture that same energy. I think that's the approach here. Mm-hmm. I think they really sat down and examined these songs and still approached them with the same love and respect for them.
Yeah.
And, you know, arguably put out better versions of them. Again, I know that's sacrilege, and I'm not fucking, you know, dissing the OG ones, but I think you can argue that some of these are better done.
Yep.
I mean, at least I can argue that the artwork done by Elron Cantor here, like the revision, is fucking fantastic. And, well, at least the Morbid Visions one, I think, is a lot better than the original. Bestial Devastation, they're pretty damn close, but I mean, Elron's fucking awesome. Like, we'll be talking about another album cover he's done here very soon. Now, I did bring up that they had 2 new songs, one on each of the albums, and they're pretty good. But I'll be honest, they're my least favorite out of all the songs, mainly because, well, I'm more attached to the older ones, and I was more fascinated by the re-recordings, but they're still really good. On Bestial Devastation, we have Sexta Fiera 13, which is vicious and gnarly, and I would say both these songs were done in the spirit of these re-recordings. Like, they're
correct.
More death thrash. There's even blast beats on Burn the Dead, which is the other one on Morbid Visions. There's a little bit more hardcore and kind of punk to them, like, you know, D beats and nasty grooves. Like, again, they're very similar to what they were doing in terms of the re-recordings. I think they just kind of felt the fucking vibe and was like, you know what, we got a couple of songs where kind of, woodshedding, and, you know, let's just throw them on there, and they're both good. But again,
yep.
You know, I don't think they're as good as the OG ones that they re-recorded here.
Yeah, they're not my favorite either, but I will agree that they wrote both of these in the vein of both albums. It sounds like it would have mixed, but I agree with Nick. They're my least favorite of what's being presented. And maybe that's just because they're new and mixed new with old. I don't know.
I mean, it's still done in that old spirit. Like, I do like the cowbell intro to the breakdown and the doomy lead section at the end of Sexta in particular. But yeah, they're both really good. It's just, again, I have like some familiarity with these older songs, and hearing them with like some new life, not necessarily breathed into them, more like screamed into them. Yeah, it was hard not to be entranced by that. Like, we were fucking just exchanging fucking, like, you know, stank faces. Like, dude,
yeah,
what the fuck? This sounds fucking amazing.
Yeah, and we're going to see this live in September. I think I just have to listen to these records every day until we go to that show so I can be, you know, the headbang, the muscle's already there because I'm going to headbang the fuck out of both of these when we see them live.
We'll get you a neck brace and put some, like, fucking stickers on it.
That sounds great.
There you go.
I could use that anyway.
Now, we didn't rate these individually because we kind of had the same score for both.
Yeah.
And, I'm going to go ahead and give it 4.5 stars for both. Both are 4.5 stars. Both are fucking incredible. And I fucking hate re-recordings for the most part. I will be completely honest. They piss me the fuck off most of the time because my argument is generally you got it right the first time. You nailed it. And this one, I can't necessarily say that. Like, they did well and, again, wrote some hyper-influential albums, but there's stuff on here that is definitely improved upon. And, again, when it came down to the production, which I think was very important on here, it maintained that rawness, that ferocity, that youthful fucking vigor that is still pouring out of this. You know, that's the thing that they nailed on both of these. The newer songs sound really good too. It's a nice little extra that they peppered on there. But yeah, these old songs, these old timeless fucking riffs that still set a standard in extreme metal today, both of them are fucking great. Go get these. You know, I'm not going to eat my words entirely when it comes down to re-recordings, but when it comes down to these two, yeah, you know what?
Yep.
These are really fucking good.
Yeah, I'm with Nick. I was with Nick. I mean, pretty much from the very beginning. These are great. It's 4.5 stars for me for both of them. They're both killer. I'm so excited. I'm so excited that 2 records that I have wanted to hear sound better over the years finally sound better. That's usually my gripe with re-recordings, is if you're gonna do it, just tweak everything so I can hear it all. Don't fuck with anything else. Don't change anything. Don't add your new idea of what these are supposed to sound like. If you're gonna re-record it, just tweak it and make it sound better, and they did. And like you said, Arthur RIZK didn't change anything, he just tweaked it. I imagine, you know, Max sat down with him and said, okay, I want this to sound better, I want this to sound better, I want this and this and this. And Arthur RIZK said, cool. And he did exactly that and left it go. I really think that's what was happening. I think, you know, both Max and Igor sat down and said, maybe we should revisit this. Maybe we could do a little bit better. Maybe we could tweak it a little bit. I've always wanted to hear it sound like this. Let's see if we can make it sound like this. And they did. And it sounds fucking amazing. And I too, I think the originals are awesome. I have jammed them over and over and over again. And that piece of me has always just said, be cool if they could tweak the guitar. They did a great job. This is fucking awesome. Go buy both of them. You're gonna have to trust us. All right? Because we realize we're probably pissing off some people, and it's going to be a long day in the comment section.
No, we never do that. That's ridiculous.
But anyway, yeah, these both kick ass. I'm glad I had a chance to listen to them. It was a fun listen. I guarantee you it's going to be a fun listen. Go check them out.
So, if you enjoyed this review, give it a thumbs up, and if you're new to the channel, subscribe, because we do stuff like this all the time. We are also on Patreon. If you'd like to help us out there, there's a link down below to thrallsmetal.com, which is currently under construction, but once that is up, our Patreon link is there, as well as on our channel someplace, and hopefully soon we will have some shirts to show you. We will definitely do an announcement video for those, and probably a giveaway, because why not give away one of our cool new shirts? And, of course, thank you all so much for liking, subscribing, following, all that. Getting to 15,000 subscribers was really fucking awesome, and it's just cool to see this channel grow once again. I know we say the same shit. We do. We're guilty of it. But this is the gushy part where we get all fucking feely, and we just want to thank you in your thank holes.
Yeah, right?
He definitely wants to thank you.
Not in your thank hole, though. I'm going to let Nick thank hole you. just tunnel that out. Just thank you.
We'll save that for the OnlyFans.
Sure. The Thralls of Metal OnlyFans.
I mean, it's mostly just pictures of Shred's butthole. Sorry.
It is. I'm not going to lie.
Anyway, before we talk way too much about that, thank you all once again, and we will catch you later.